I knew something was wrong the second I pulled up, not in a dramatic way, just that quiet kind of wrong that settles in your gut before your brain catches up, like when a gate you've opened 1,000 times is already swinging loose in the wind, and then I saw it. Or more accurately, I didn't see it, because my fence was gone. Not broken, not damaged, gone. Posts ripped out of the ground, rails stacked off to the side like someone had cleaned up after themselves just enough to pretend it wasn't a mess, and 80 acres of pasture sitting wide open like it didn't belong to anyone at all. I killed the engine and just sat there for a second, hands still on the wheel, listening to nothing but the ticking of hot metal and the wind moving through grass that was never supposed to be exposed like that, and the first thing I thought about wasn't even the fence, it was the horses. I stepped out fast, boots hitting dirt harder than usual, already scanning the corral. Thank God they were still there, calm, unaware, like nothing had changed, which almost made it worse. The rest of the land didn't look right. You get used to your boundaries, not just physical ones, but the feeling of where your space ends and the rest of the world begins. That fence had been there longer than some of the houses down the road. Weathered, sure, a little uneven in spots, but it did its job. It told the world, this is mine, and more importantly, it told me where I stood. And now, it was just gone. That's when I noticed the sign. Laminated, of course. Staked right into the dirt like a flag planted after a victory. I walked over, already annoyed, already knowing I wasn't going to like what it said, and there it was in bold, clean lettering, something about non-compliant fencing and community aesthetic standards, like I had somehow signed up to be part of their little brochure-perfect neighborhood. I actually laughed when I read it, just one short breath through my nose, because it was so absurd it almost didn't land. I don't live in their community. Never have. My land wraps around the back half of that gated development like an afterthought they couldn't quite buy out when they were putting it together. On their side, everything's trimmed and polished, sidewalks that don't crack, trees that get pruned on schedule, SUVs that look like they've never seen a dirt road. On my side, well, it's real. It's work. It's land that actually gets used. And apparently, that offended them. I followed the tire tracks without even thinking about it. Big, wide impressions cutting straight through my grass like they had every right to be there. Like whoever drove and didn't hesitate for a second. They led right out to the service road, and from there it wasn't hard to figure out where they'd come from. There's only one contractor outfit in the area that does quick turnaround jobs for the neighborhood. Clean, efficient, no questions asked if the check clears. By the time I pulled into their yard, I'd already played the conversation in my head a dozen different ways, some calm, some not so much. But when I stepped out and saw the guy in charge, mid-50s, ball cap, clipboard tucked under his arm like it was part of his body, I kept it simple. You take down a fence today? I asked. He looked at me, squinted a little like he was placing my face, then nodded without hesitation. Yeah, that yours. That was mine, I said, keeping my voice level, even though my jaw had already tightened up. Who told you to do it? He didn't even flinch. HOA president. Said it was approved. We had the paperwork. What paperwork? I asked, and I could hear the edge creeping in now, no matter how much I tried to keep it flat. He shrugged, casual, like we were talking about replacing a mailbox. Violation notice, authorization form, whole thing. Looked legit to me. They said it was their property line anyway. I just stared at him for a second, letting that sink in, because that right there, that assumption, that was the problem. They didn't know where their land ended. Or maybe they did, and they just didn't care. You ever check county records before you start pulling posts out of the ground? I asked. He shifted a little then, not uncomfortable exactly, but aware the conversation wasn't going the way he expected. Look, man, I get paid to do a job. They said it was cleared. If there's an issue, you take it up with them. Of course. Pass the responsibility up the chain. Keep your hands clean. I nodded once, slow, like I was agreeing with him, even though I wasn't. Yeah, I said. I will. And I meant it. Driving back, I took the long way, past the entrance to their neighborhood, where the stone sign sits out front with the name carved in deep, polished letters. Something like Willow Crest Estates. Or maybe it was Silver Brook. I don't remember exactly. Just one of those names designed to sound peaceful and expensive at the same time. There was a guard at the gate, uniform pressed, posture straight, like he was protecting something important. I didn't go in. I didn't need to. Not yet. Because somewhere between seeing my land stripped bare and hearing that contractor talk like it was all routine, something had shifted in me, not anger exactly, not right away, more like clarity. They thought I was just going to fix it, that I'd come home, see the damage, shake my head, and start rebuilding like it was my problem to solve. And maybe most people would have. But the thing is, they made one mistake. They assumed the only thing they were messing with was a fence. They had no idea what actually ran through my land, or how much they depended on it. And as I pulled back onto my driveway, slowing down near the stretch where the fence used to stand, looking out over that open line where there should have been a boundary, I realized something else too. If they wanted to treat my property like it belonged to them, then maybe it was time they learned exactly where their control ended. I didn't storm into their office, didn't call a lawyer, didn't even bother dialing the number on that little laminated notice. Instead, I slept on it. Or at least I tried to, laying there staring at the ceiling while the whole thing replayed in slow loops. The missing fence, the contractor's shrug, that quiet confidence in his voice like this kind of thing just happens. And somewhere around 3 a.m., it stopped feeling like a problem and started feeling like a decision. See, most people don't realize this, but land holds memory, not in some mystical way, just in the practical sense, the kind you inherit whether you want it or not. My dad used to say, you don't just own land, you manage everything that touches it. And growing up, I thought he meant fences, cattle, maybe the occasional trespasser. Turns out, he meant a lot more than that. The well sits about half a mile from the main house, tucked behind a cluster of mesquite and scrub oak. Nothing fancy, just a low concrete structure with a metal door that sticks in the summer heat. If you didn't know what it was, you'd probably drive right past it. But that little building, that's the reason that entire neighborhood even exists. Back before any of those houses went up, before the roads got paved and the trees got lined up like soldiers, this whole area was dry as bone most of the year. Developers came through, looked at the land, saw potential, but no water. And no water means no permits. No permits means no project. That's when they found my dad. He didn't trust them much, but he wasn't unreasonable either. They sat at our kitchen table. I still remember that. Coffee going cold while they talked numbers and timelines, and what they called mutual benefit. In the end, it wasn't even that complicated. They could draw water from our well, and in return, we'd have access to the paved road they were planning to build, easier transport, better connectivity. No contracts, no lawyers, just a handshake and a man's word. For a long time, it worked. Then my dad passed, the developers sold off, and the neighborhood turned into something else entirely. HOA boards, committees, rules about mailbox colors and grass height. And somewhere along the way, that handshake got forgotten. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe they just figured it didn't matter anymore. Standing outside that pump house the next morning, keys in hand, I realized something simple. The agreement was never written down, which meant legally, there wasn't much tying me to them at all. Morally? Maybe. Practically? That was a different story. I opened the door, felt that familiar rush of cooler air from inside, faint smell of metal and damp concrete. And there it was, the control panel. Nothing high-tech, just a series of gauges, switches, and one very important valve that regulated the line feeding straight into their system. Their pool, their clubhouse, their landscaping, all of it traced back to this one point. I rested my hand on that valve for a second, not hesitating exactly, just acknowledging the weight of it, because once you make a move like that, there's no pretending it didn't happen. This wasn't calling to complain. This wasn't filing paperwork. This was action. All right. I muttered to myself, more out of habit than anything else, and then I turned it. Slow, steady, until it stopped. There wasn't some dramatic sound, no alarms, no flashing lights. Just silence. Same as before. If you didn't know better, you'd think nothing had changed at all. But it had. By midday, I got the first hint. Not a call, not yet, just a slight flicker in pressure readings on my side, confirming what I already knew. They were drawing from reserves now, whatever was left in their system. By evening, I drove past the edge of their property again, not going in, just observing, and you could see it if you looked closely. The water in the pool didn't have that crisp, clean shimmer anymore. It looked tired. Day 2, things got more obvious. I was out fixing a gate. Ironic, I know, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it ring. Then another. And another. By the time I checked it, I had 6 missed calls and 1 voicemail. Mr. Carter, This is Elaine from the Willowbrook HOA. We've noticed a disruption in our water supply, and, we're trying to determine if there's been some kind of issue on your end." Her voice had that careful politeness, like she was choosing each word to avoid saying something wrong. But underneath it, there was tension. I didn't call back. Instead, I drove out again that afternoon, parked a little farther down where the walking trail curves along the edge of my land, and just watched. The pool was still open, technically, but fewer people, and the ones who were there kept glancing at the water like they didn't trust it. You could smell it now too. Not terrible, not yet, but that faint shift, chlorine struggling to keep up. Day 3, that's when it tipped. Green. Not all at once. Not like someone flipped a switch, but creeping in along the edges, clouding the deep end first, then spreading until the whole thing looked like something you wouldn't let a dog swim in. And the smell? Yeah, there was no ignoring it anymore. That's when they showed up. 3 of them, standing at my front door like they owned the place, dressed like they'd stepped out of a catalog, pressed shirts, sunglasses, that same polished look their whole neighborhood carried like a uniform. The woman in front, Elaine I assumed, didn't smile. "Mr. Carter," she said, voice firm now, no more softness. "We need to resolve this situation immediately." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, taking them in for a second before answering. "Funny," I said. I was thinking the same thing about my fence. One of the guys behind her shifted, already annoyed. "That's a separate issue." "Is it?" I asked, tilting my head just a little. "Because from where I'm standing, it all seems pretty connected." Elaine exhaled slowly, like she was trying to stay in control. "If there's been some misunderstanding regarding property lines, we can address that through the proper channels. But cutting off a shared resource." "Shared," I interrupted, not raising my voice, just letting the word hang there. "That well sits on my land. Has always been on my land." There was a pause then. Small, but noticeable. "We have historical access," she said carefully. "Do you have paperwork?" I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. That was all the answer I needed. I stepped back inside for a moment, leaving the door half open, and grabbed something off the kitchen counter. When I came back, I handed it to her. Laminated. Just like theirs. She looked down, eyes scanning the page, and I watched as her expression shifted from controlled to confused, then tight. "What is this?" she asked. "Invoice," I said. "Fence removal, property damage, replacement materials, labor." And while I was at it, I added 10 years of water usage fees. Figured we might as well bring everything up to date. The guy behind her actually laughed, short and sharp. "You can't be serious." "Oh, I am," I said, meeting his gaze. "Dead serious." Elaine lowered the paper slowly. "Our legal team will be in contact." "I figured," I said with a small nod. "They should bring a map." And before they could say anything else, I closed the door. Not slammed, just closed. And on the other side, I could hear them for a second, muffled voices, frustration creeping in where confidence used to be. Then footsteps, fading away. I stood there a while after they left. Quiet house. Nothing but the hum of the fridge and the distant sound of wind moving across open land, and I realized something. This wasn't over. Not even close. Because by now, it wasn't just about a fence anymore. It was about control, about who got to decide what mattered and who got ignored. And out there, just beyond my property line, their perfect little world was starting to crack. By the end of that week, you could feel it in the air, not just on my side of the property, but over there too. Past the stone entrance and the neat rows of trees, something had shifted, like a place that was used to running smoothly suddenly forgot how to breathe. I didn't need to drive through the gates to know it, though I'll admit. I did once or twice, slow roll, windows down, just enough to catch a glimpse without making a scene. The pool was closed by then, big sign out front, temporary maintenance, like anyone believed that. The water, man, it was bad. Thick, green, the kind of surface that didn't reflect sunlight anymore, just swallowed it. You could see leaves and debris floating untouched, and the smell carried farther than you'd expect, that sour, chemical rot that sticks in your throat. But it wasn't just the pool. The clubhouse had gone quiet. No music, no chatter, no kids running in and out with towels dragging behind them. The parking lot, usually packed on weekends, sat half empty, a few cars scattered like people weren't sure if they were allowed to be there anymore. And the landscaping, that one surprised me. Those perfectly trimmed hedges and bright green strips of grass. They don't stay that way on looks alone. Without consistent water, under that kind of heat, they started to fade fast. Patches of yellow crept in, edges crisped up, flowers drooped like they were just done trying. And then came the noise. Not out loud, not at first, but online. I don't even use Facebook much, but a buddy of mine, Tom, runs feed supply down the highway. He called me up one evening, half laughing, half amazed. "You see what's going on over there?" he asked. "I've got a pretty good idea," I said. "No, I mean it's blowing up," he went on. "Their community page? People are losing it. Parents asking why the pool's closed. Folks demanding refunds for events. Somebody said they had a birthday party booked, and now they're scrambling last minute." I could picture it without even looking. The comments piling up, speculation turning into blame, blame turning into pressure. That's how those places work. Everything's fine until it's not, and then suddenly everybody wants answers. "What are they saying?" I asked, leaning back in my chair. Tom chuckled. "Oh, you know, at first they blamed maintenance, then supply issues. Now people are starting to ask bigger questions, like how a whole neighborhood ends up dependent on something they don't control." I didn't say anything to that, because that right there, that was the heart of it. Control. For years, they acted like they had it. Rules, fines, committees, all neatly packaged to make it seem like everything fell under their authority. And for the most part, inside those gates, it probably did. But they forgot about the part that didn't. They forgot about where their water came from. Week 2 hit harder. They tried bringing in water trucks. I heard that from a couple different folks. Big tankers rolling in through the gate early in the morning, trying to refill the system enough to stabilize things. But without proper filtration running consistently, it didn't matter. The pool stayed cloudy, borderline unusable, and every day it sat like that, it got worse. Meanwhile, my phone kept lighting up. Unknown numbers mostly. Some voicemails, some texts. A few polite. A few not so much. "Mr. Carter, we really need to resolve this. You're causing unnecessary disruption. This could have legal consequences." I listened to a couple, ignored the rest. Because here's the thing, they still didn't get it. Even now, they were talking like this was a misunderstanding, like we just needed to work something out, like they hadn't crossed a line first. No apology, no acknowledgement, just pressure. And I wasn't interested in meeting them halfway anymore. Then one afternoon, I got a different kind of call. Recognizable number this time. I let it ring once, twice, then picked up. Yeah. There was a pause on the other end, like whoever it was wasn't used to not being answered immediately. "This is Daniel Reeves," the voice said finally, measured, controlled. "President of the Willow Brook HOA. Of course it was. "What can I do for you?" I asked, keeping it neutral. Another pause. Shorter this time. "We'd like to come to an agreement," he said. No small talk. No pretense. Just straight to it. I glanced out the window, out toward the stretch where my fence used to stand, still open, still bare. "You already had one," I said. "Didn't seem to matter much to you." "That was handled improperly," he replied, a little tighter now. "We're prepared to correct that." "Are you?" I asked. "Yes," he said, firmer. "Fully." I let the silence sit for a second, just long enough to make sure he felt it. "All right," I said finally. "Then come by." They showed up that evening. Same driveway, same front door, but different energy this time. No sunglasses, no stiff posture. Just people who hadn't slept great in a while. Reeves stood in front, mid-40s maybe, well put together, but you could see the strain around his eyes. Behind him, Elaine again, quieter now, and another guy I hadn't seen before, probably legal. "We're prepared to rebuild the fence," Reeves started, no wasted time. Exactly as it was. Same materials, same layout. "We'll cover all costs." I nodded once, letting him continue. "We'll also replace any damaged gates, restore the land where the posts were removed, and," he hesitated just a fraction, "we're willing to formalize a long-term agreement for water access. 20 years. At your rate." There it was. Not a favor. Not a handshake. A contract. Paid up front, the guy behind him added quickly. "Of course." I leaned against the doorframe again, same as before, studying them, letting the moment stretch just a bit. "And the last 10 years?" I asked. Reeves exhaled slowly. "We can negotiate." "No," I said, cutting in, calm but firm. "We're not negotiating that part." Silence. You could almost hear the calculation happening in real time, numbers shifting, priorities adjusting. Pool versus pride. Community versus cost. Finally, he nodded. Fine, he said. We'll include it. That surprised me a little, I won't lie. But it also told me everything I needed to know about how bad things had gotten on their end. I pushed off the frame and stepped forward slightly. All right, I said. Then I've got one condition. Reeves straightened a bit, cautious now. What is it? I approve the fence design, I said. He blinked once. The design. Yeah, I said, a faint hint of a smile pulling at the corner of my mouth. Figure if it's going on my land, it ought to meet my standards. For a second, I thought he might push back. Argue. Try to reclaim some ground. He didn't. That's acceptable, he said. And just like that, it was done. We shook on it, ironically enough, though this time there'd be paperwork to back it up. Real contracts. Real boundaries. The kind that don't get ignored just because someone doesn't like the view. It took a couple weeks after that for everything to go back to normal, or at least their version of normal. The fence went back up, stronger this time. The well got turned back on. The pool cleared up eventually, though I heard it took a while for people to trust it again. As for me, I got my land back the way it was supposed to be. But more than that, I got something else. Clarity. Because here's the truth, this whole thing could have been avoided. One conversation, one phone call, a little respect. Instead, they chose entitlement. And yeah, maybe I could have handled it differently too. Maybe I could have gone straight to lawyers, filed complaints, played it by the book. But that's not what they responded to. They responded to consequence. So now I'm curious. If you were in my position, what would you have done? Would you have turned the water off, or let it slide and rebuilt the fence yourself? And on the flip side, where do you think they crossed the line? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I've heard arguments both ways, and honestly, I'm still not sure everyone would agree on who was right here.